The artificial gravity aboard Centauri Prime Academy's docking bay made Lieutenant Kira Reeves feel like she could leap across the entire hangar in a single bound. At 1.2 standard Earth gravities, her homeworld of Titan Prime had shaped her into something that made most galactic species nervous. She watched as a group of tentacled Vexarians practically tied themselves in knots trying to clear her path, their color-shifting skin displaying what she'd learned to recognize as their fear response. The truly amusing part was that at 5'8", with an athletic build, she was actually quite average by human standards. But to most of the galaxy's spacefaring races, she might as well have been a monster straight out of their deepest nightmares. A Deathworlder, they called her kind. Someone whose very genetics had been forged in the crucible of one of the galaxy's most punishing worlds. Lieutenant Reeves. A floating orb of translucent plasma approached her, its core pulsing with gentle blues and greens. I am Administrator Zax 427. Welcome to Centauri Prime Academy. Thank you, Administrator. Kira kept her voice soft, having learned early in her diplomatic training that her natural speaking voice could startle more sensitive species. I appreciate the opportunity to study here. The plasma orb bobbed in what might have been a nod. You are only our third human student. The Council believes that increased integration would benefit all species. The slight pause spoke volumes about exactly whose idea this integration had been, and how many others had opposed it. As they floated / walked through the Academy's pristine corridors, Kira couldn't help but notice the architectural compromises made to accommodate dozens of different species. Gravity plates in the floor could be adjusted by sector, atmospheric composition changed by corridor, and temperature varied wildly from one room to the next. It was a testament to the ingenuity of cooperative engineering. Your quarters will be in Section 7 Delta. Zax 427 continued. We've adjusted the gravity to Earth standard to make you more comfortable, though I understand that's still lighter than your homeworld. That's very thoughtful, thank you. Kira managed not to sigh. They put her in the reinforced section, originally designed for supermassive species. Standard procedure for Deathworlders, apparently. Their tour was interrupted by a commotion in one of the research wings. A small crowd had gathered around a sealed doorway, from which angry shouts in multiple languages emanated. Kira's universal translator struggled to keep up with the overlapping voices. Absolutely unacceptable. Something that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a sunset was gesturing with multiple limbs. The artifact's energy signature has doubled since this morning. Perhaps if you'd stop poking it with radiation bursts, retorted a crystalline, being whose body chimed with each word, it wouldn't be reacting so violently. Zax 427's plasma core flickered with concern. Excuse me, Lieutenant. It seems I'm needed here. The Administrator floated toward the argument, leaving Kira alone in the corridor. That's when she felt it. A pull, subtle but insistent, like a half-remembered song playing just at the edge of hearing. Without conscious thought, she found herself moving closer to the sealed research room. The arguing scientists were too engrossed in their debate to notice as she peered through the transparent aluminum window. In the center of the room, floating in a containment field, was what appeared to be a simple band of dark metal about the size of a bracelet. But as Kira watched, patterns of light rippled across its surface like oil on water. The pull grew stronger, and with it came something else. A voice, barely a whisper, but growing clearer with each passing second. Well, it seemed to say directly into her mind. After 50,000 years, finally something interesting walks by. Kira took an involuntary step back, bumping into someone. She turned to find herself face to face, or rather, face to thorax, with a tall, insectoid being whose compound eyes reflected her startled expression in fractals. "I am Professor Tix." The being clicked, mandibles moving in what Kira hoped was a friendly gesture. "And you must be our new Deathworlder student." The professor's head tilted. Fascinating. The artifact's energy signature just spiked by 200% when you approached. "Would you be willing to participate in some tests?" Before Kira could respond, the band of metal in the containment field pulsed with brilliant light. Alarms blared as energy readings went off the scale. The last thing Kira heard before chaos erupted was that whispered voice again, this time tinged with what could only be described as glee. "Oh, this is going to be fun." The containment field shattered like glass, and the metal band shot through the air directly toward Kira's outstretched hand. The moment it touched her skin, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. Then everything changed. The metal liquefied, flowing up her arm like quicksilver, forming intricate patterns beneath her skin that pulsed with an inner light. Knowledge and power flooded her consciousness. The weight of millennia, the secrets of a long-dead civilization, and the realization that she had just become something the galaxy hadn't seen in 50,000 years. As the assembled scientists backed away in terror and security alarms wailed throughout the station, that ancient voice spoke again, now crystal clear and decidedly amused. "I do believe introductions are in order. I am Nexus, the last creation of the predecessor empire. And you, my dear Deathworlder, are exactly what I've been waiting for." Professor Tix's mandibles clattered in what might have been excitement or fear. "Remarkable. Simply remarkable. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Kira looked down at her arm, where the flowing patterns of light had settled into what looked like circuits made of starlight under her skin. "I think," she said slowly, "I just changed the course of galactic history." "Oh, honey," Nexus chuckled in her mind, "you don't know the half of it yet." In the doorway, Administrator Zax 427's plasma core had shifted to a concerning shade of puce. "The Council," the Administrator managed to say, "is not going to like this." "The Council," Nexus replied, speaking through Kira in a voice that echoed with power, "is about to discover that the galaxy is a much more interesting place than they thought." And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, something ancient stirred at the awakening of power it had not felt in 50,000 years. The game was about to begin again, and this time humanity would be playing for keeps. The Academy's medical bay hummed with nervous energy as a dozen different scanning devices hovered around Kira. Their operators kept a respectful, or perhaps fearful, distance as they monitored readings that seemed to defy every known law of physics. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Raxlith, his crystalline form refracting the medical bay's lights into dancing patterns. "The artifact's neural integration is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's not just bonded to your nervous system, it's evolving with it." "I told you," Nexus commented in Kira's mind, "these modern scientists have all the observational skills of a stunned Vrax beetle. Though I do like how this one sparkles." Kira suppressed a smile. Over the past 24 hours, she'd learned that the ancient AI had opinions about everything, and wasn't shy about sharing them. "Doctor," she said carefully, "I understand everyone's concern, but I can assure you that Nexus isn't hostile." "Oh, I'm absolutely hostile," Nexus corrected cheerfully. "Just not to you." The medical bay's doors slid open, admitting a tall, striking figure that immediately drew every eye in the room. Commander Jaron Vale moved with the fluid grace of his species, his iridescent scales shifting colors in a way that Kira's human brain registered as both beautiful and dangerous. As the Academy's head of security and a member of the prestigious Drachnid race, his presence here meant things had escalated to the highest levels. "Lieutenant Reeves," he said, his voice a resonant purr that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "The Council requests your presence." "Oh," Nexus chimed in. "Now this is interesting. Your heart rate just jumped 23%, and it wasn't from fear. Shall we explore that reaction in detail?" "Quiet. You," Kira thought back, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. The walk to the council chambers gave Kira time to study Vale from the corner of her eye. Like all Drachnids, he combined reptilian and avian features in a way that shouldn't have been attractive to a human, but somehow was. His movements were carefully controlled, and she noticed he matched his pace perfectly to hers, neither showing fear of her Deathworlder strength, nor trying to intimidate her with his superior height. "The Council is concerned," he said finally, breaking the silence. "But I've reviewed your service record. You're not what they expect for a Deathworlder." "And what do they expect, Commander?" His scales rippled with what might have been amusement, brute force, uncontrolled aggression. Instead, they got someone who scored higher on diplomatic protocols than any other applicant in the Academy's history. "Let me guess, that scares them even more." "Smart and strong is a frightening combination, Lieutenant." He stopped, turning to face her fully. "Especially now that you're bonded to what might be the most powerful weapon in the galaxy." "Excuse you," Nexus interjected, this time speaking aloud through the patterns in Kira's skin, making them pulse with soft light. "I am definitively the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. The Starkiller was destroyed 3 millennia ago, and the Worldbreaker was never more than a prototype." Vale's scales shifted to a deeper hue, but to his credit, he didn't step back. "And that's exactly what concerns them. A Deathworlder wielding predecessor technology. It confirms every fear the Council has about humanity's potential for violence." Or, Kira said softly, "It confirms something else entirely. Nexus chose me not because I'm violent, but because I understand something your Council has forgotten. True strength isn't about destruction. It's about protection." The patterns under her skin pulsed in agreement, and for a moment, something like recognition flickered in Vale's eyes. Then the council chamber doors loomed before them, and the moment passed. Inside, representatives from 24 spacefaring races arranged themselves in tiered seating that accommodated everything from floating gas beings to silicon-based crystalline entities. At the center, Administrator Zax 400 and 27's plasma core churned with anxiety. "Lieutenant Reeves," the administrator began, "the Council has reviewed the preliminary reports regarding your bond with the predecessor artifact. We have concerns." "When don't you have concerns?" Nexus commented dryly. "I've reviewed your recent history. You had concerns about humans learning to split atoms. You had concerns about them achieving FTL travel. You even had concerns about them learning to make decent coffee, though that last one was actually valid. Have you considered that your concerns might be rooted in something other than facts?" A ripple of murmurs passed through the assembled council members. Vale, taking his position at the security station, watched the exchange with unblinking attention. "The artifact speaks truth," rumbled Eldricthix, his mantis-like form casting long shadows. "Our concerns about humanity have always proven excessive. Perhaps it is time we considered a different approach." "A different approach." Burst out Councillor Venn, her feathered crest rising in agitation. "The human is bonded with technology we barely understand. Technology that, need I remind you, belonged to a civilization that nearly destroyed the galaxy. Actually, Nexus said, its tone suddenly serious, we were trying to save it. The chamber fell silent. What do you mean? Kira asked, speaking both for herself and the stunned council. Why do you think I waited so long to choose a wielder? Why accept you, specifically? The patterns under Kira's skin began tracing complex geometries. The predecessors didn't fall in some great cataclysm. We chose to go, to sleep, to wait, because we saw what was coming. And now, after 50,000 years, it's finally arriving. Images flooded Kira's mind, vast shapes moving in the darkness between galaxies, hunger older than stars, patience deeper than space itself. She gasped, stumbling, and found herself steadied by Vale's quick reflexes. Lieutenant, his scales had shifted to concerned crimson. What did you see? The real reason, she whispered, why the predecessors created weapons like Nexus, and why humanity's strength might be exactly what the galaxy needs. In the darkness of space, invisible to all but the most advanced sensors, something vast and ancient accelerated its approach to known space. The game wasn't just beginning again. It was entering its final phase. The Academy's combat simulation chamber stretched 3 stories high, its adaptive environment capable of recreating any battlefield scenario in the known galaxy. Today, it looked like a war zone. Again, Kira commanded, picking herself up from the scorched floor. Her body ached, but the patterns under her skin pulsed with undiminished energy. You're pushing yourself too hard, Vale observed from the control room. His scales had settled into a concerned amber hue that Kira was starting to find distractingly attractive. The human's limits are not what you think. Nexus chimed in, its voice echoing both in Kira's mind and through the chamber's speakers. Watch. The simulation spawned another wave of holographic enemies, recreations of ancient combat drones based on Nexus's memories. Kira felt the familiar surge as the weapon's power flowed through her nervous system. Light erupted from the patterns in her skin, coalescing into shields, weapons, and things that defied conventional physics. The predecessors called it the Neural Symphony. Nexus explained as Kira danced through the battlefield. The perfect fusion of organic intuition and technological power, but in 50,000 years, you're only the third being I've encountered who could handle it. Vale leaned forward, his attention fixed on Kira's movements, because she's human. Because she understands something fundamental about power. Nexus's tone grew thoughtful. The others all wanted to use me as a weapon. She wants to use me as a shield. Kira dispatched the last drone with a gesture that turned it into component atoms. The best defense is not always a good offense, she quoted, breathing heavily. Sometimes it's actually, a good defense. The chamber's lights brightened as the simulation ended. Vale made his way down from the control room, his movement drawing Kira's attention despite her exhaustion. Over the past week, they'd developed a comfortable working relationship that was rapidly becoming something more, though neither had acknowledged it yet. The council is meeting again tomorrow, he said, offering her a hydration pack specially designed for human physiology. They're concerned about your progress. When aren't they? Kira accepted the pack gratefully, trying to ignore how their fingers brushed during the exchange. Actually, Nexus interrupted, we have a bigger problem. The patterns under Kira's skin flared with urgent light, projecting a holographic display into the air between them. It showed a section of space at the edge of charted territory, where something massive was moving through the darkness. That's impossible, Vale breathed, his scales shifting to alarmed crimson. Nothing that big could have escaped our detection networks. Unless it didn't want to be detected until now. Nexus's voice had lost all its usual playfulness. They're called the Void Hunters. They're why the predecessors created me, why we went into hibernation, and why I chose Kira. The hologram expanded, showing more details of the approaching entity. It defied conventional geometry, its form suggesting something that had evolved in dimensions humans were never meant to perceive. 50,000 years ago, Nexus continued, we fought them to a standstill, but we realized we couldn't win, not as we were. We needed something different, something they wouldn't expect. A species that had evolved on a world so harsh it made them adaptable beyond conventional limits. A people whose very nature combined strength with empathy, violence with protection. Humans, Vale said softly. Specifically, Nexus added, this human. Kira stared at the hologram, her mind racing. That's why you waited so long to choose a wielder. You were waiting for humanity to reach the stars. For humanity to reach a very specific level of development, Nexus corrected. Advanced enough to handle my power, but not so advanced that they'd lost touch with their primitive instincts. The perfect balance of civilization and survival drive. A sudden alarm blared through the academy. Vale's communicator lit up with urgent messages. They've detected something at the outer markers, he reported, scales now a deep purple of concern. Multiple contacts, moving fast. Scouts. Nexus confirmed grimly. The Void Hunters always send scouts first. We have perhaps 48 hours before the main force arrives. Kira felt the weight of destiny settling onto her shoulders. How do we fight them? That's the wrong question, Nexus replied. The question is, how do we save everyone? Vale's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a determined blue. I'll call an emergency council session. They need to know. They need to do more than know, Kira said, straightening up as new patterns of light traced themselves across her skin. They need to understand that everything they feared about humanity, our strength, our adaptability, our potential for violence, might be exactly what saves them. The patterns under her skin pulsed in agreement, and she felt Nexus's power surge through her with new purpose. In the distance, alarms continued to sound as more scout ships appeared on the Academy's sensors. Vale moved closer, his presence both reassuring and electric. What do you need from me? Kira met his gaze, no longer trying to hide what she felt. I need you to help me convince the Council that their worst fear might be their best hope. And then? His scales rippled with colors she was beginning to recognize as affection. And then, she smiled, the light of ancient power dancing in her eyes. We show the Void Hunters why they should have stayed in the darkness. Above them, in the vast darkness of space, more ships emerged from the void. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and at its center stood a human woman with the power of the predecessors, flowing through her veins and a growing understanding of why she had been chosen. The neural symphony was about to reach its crescendo. The Academy's central command hub had transformed into a war room. Holographic displays showed the advancing Void Hunter scouts, their impossible geometries causing tracking systems to glitch and sensors to malfunction. They're testing our defenses, Kira explained to the assembled council. Learning how we see them, how we fight. Their ships, Elder Kvix observed, mandibles clicking nervously. They appear to be changing. Adapting. Vale confirmed, his scales a tense grey. Every defensive measure we deploy, they analyze and counter within minutes. The patterns under Kira's skin pulsed with ancient knowledge as Nexus spoke through her. This is how they hunt. They learn, they adapt, they consume, They've devoured 1,000 galaxies this way. A sudden alert drew everyone's attention to the main display. One of the scout ships had broken formation, accelerating toward a civilian transport. No time for debate, Kira announced, already moving. "Commander Vale with me." They raced to the launch bay where a sleek interceptor waited. As they boarded, Vale's scales shifted to a color Kira had never seen before, something between battle-ready red and protective blue. "The neural symphony," he said as they strapped in. "Show me what it can really do." Kira smiled, letting Nexus's power flow freely. The interceptor's systems merged with the patterns under her skin, transforming the small ship into something that made the Academy's sensors scream in protest. What followed was a dance of light and shadow in the void. The Void Hunter Scout twisted reality around itself, but Kira responded with maneuvers that shouldn't have been possible, guided by Nexus's knowledge and her own Deathworlder instincts. "Now that," Nexus commented appreciatively, "is how you pilot a ship." The battle ended with the scout ship reduced to component atoms and a civilian transport saved. But as they returned to the Academy, Kira knew this was just the beginning. "They'll come in force now," she said softly. "They know we can hurt them." Vale's scales rippled with something that might have been pride. "Then let them come." The Void Hunters arrived in force 3 days later. Their massive forms blotted out the stars, reality bending around them as they approached Centauri Prime. In the Academy's command center, Kira stood before the assembled fleet commanders of 23 species. The patterns under her skin blazed with purpose, and when she spoke, it was with the combined voice of humanity's determination and predecessor wisdom. Everything the Council feared about humanity, she declared, was preparation for this moment. "We evolved on a death world, not because the universe was cruel, but because it was preparing us. Our strength, our adaptability, our capacity for both violence and protection, it was all leading to this." Vale moved to stand beside her, his scales shimmering with colors that spoke of trust and something deeper. "The combined fleet stands ready." "Oh, this is going to be spectacular," Nexus chimed in, its ancient power surging through Kira's neural pathways. "Shall we show them what a real neural symphony sounds like?" The battle that followed would be remembered for millennia. Kira, her body blazing with predecessor technology, conducted a symphony of destruction and protection. Ships moved in patterns that defied physics, guided by her understanding of both human combat and ancient knowledge. The Void Hunters were powerful, but they had never faced anything like this. A Deathworlder wielding predecessor technology supported by the combined might of the galaxy's civilized species. Where they expected fear, they found determination. Where they sought weakness, they found strength. In the final moments, as Vale's tactical brilliance and Kira's power cornered the last Void Hunter vessel, something unexpected happened. The enemy tried to communicate. "They say they'd never encountered a species like us," Nexus translated. "They don't understand how we can be both so violent and so protective, so strong and so caring." Kira smiled, feeling Vale's presence beside her, sensing the United Fleet at her back. That's humanity's greatest secret. We're not just survivors, we're protectors. And this galaxy is under our protection. The Void Hunters retreated, their vast forms disappearing into the darkness between galaxies. But they left behind a changed galaxy. The Council's fear of humanity had transformed into respect, and Kira's demonstration of power tempered by protection became a model for a new era of cooperation. "So," Vale said later, his scales shimmering with colors Kira now recognized as love, "what does a predecessor weapon do after saving the galaxy?" Kira looked at the patterns under her skin feeling Nexus's amused presence in her mind. "I think," she said, "we start writing a new symphony. One with a bit more romance this time." Nexus added cheerfully, "All this fighting and protecting is well and good, but I've waited 50,000 years to play matchmaker." As Vale's scales shifted to embarrassed but pleased purple, Kira laughed. The neural symphony had started as a weapon of war, but it had become something more, a bridge between species, a shield for the innocent, and proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its capacity for violence, but its ability to turn that strength toward protection. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would they.